everybody, and welcome back to Mrs. Ruiz's class. Today we have another amazing math lesson, and it focuses on inches. So that's our title of the lesson, inches. And our objective for today, students will estimate and then use an inch ruler to measure objects. So we're going to be using this ruler here, and we're going to measure objects using inches. And we use units of measure to find the lengths of objects. So if you want to find out how tall something is or how wide something is, you measure it using units of measurement. And I want you to look at this poster. So I made another beautiful poster for you. The poster's titled Customary Lengths. And we're just going to focus on the top part because that's all we need for today's lesson. It says inches, and then in parentheses you see an IN with a period. That is the abbreviation for inches. So instead of writing out the word inches, you can use the abbreviation, and that is how you would write it. And 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. So that's useful information to know for later on when we study centimeters. And here I drew some pictures of some objects to measure in inches. So let's say you want to find out how long a paper clip is, you can measure it in inches. If you want to find out how long your fingers are, you could measure it in inches. If you want to find out how tall or wide an apple is, you can measure it in inches. If you want to find out how long a fork is, you would use inches. Or perhaps a book, like Little Red Riding Hood. If you want to find out how long or how wide that book is, you could measure it in inches. Now, of course, boys and girls, those aren't the only things you can measure in inches. There's countless things that you can measure in inches, but I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that are measured in inches. Now, this is the ruler that we're going to use for today's lesson, and if I am correct, everybody in my class, room 28, should have taken home a ruler that was inside your math book. Maybe you have this ruler, or perhaps you have this other wooden ruler. Okay, so these are the two types of rulers that we've been using in class, and I hope you have one for today's lesson. So if I get back to my poster, it says first we can estimate an object's length in units. To estimate means to find an answer that is close to the exact answer. So another word that we could use besides estimate is guess. Guess and estimate have a very close meaning. But when we estimate, I'd like to say that it's a well thought out guess. You're not just randomly saying any number, but you're thinking about it. And you're not using a measuring tool, you're just using the information that you may have in your head about measurement, and that is how you can estimate. So I'd like to show you something. So here is my ruler. Okay, I'm going to use this white one to make it easier. And if I look at this ruler, I see that it has a 0 here, and it goes all the way to the number 12. Okay, so a ruler has 12 inches. Now, when I estimate, I like to think of, what do I know or what do I have that is close to an inch? So if you see the quarter there, a quarter is about 1 inch wide. So that is what you can think of when you think of inches. You can always think, oh, I know that a quarter is about 1 inch wide. So if you want to estimate how wide something is, you could think of it in quarters. That would be a great way to estimate. And another thing I'd like to point out about this ruler, well, actually, let me put this one here. Notice that this wood one, you do not see a 0 at the end. Okay, so it is something that we just have to know that the 0 would be where the ruler actually starts. Here, I think for the sake of teaching children, they want you to understand that there is a 0 there. So these would line up right here. Those would line up right there, and we could see that they are the same length. Now, if we look at our ruler, remember I said that it has 12 inches. So this ruler here is very helpful, the school one, the white one that comes with our program, because it says inches. Okay, and inches go up to 12. Rulers have 12 inches, and it's marked inches. Do not be confused with the ruler. Sometimes people think they could use any side of the ruler. You cannot. This one here says centimeters. That is a separate type of unit of measure that we'll talk about in a later lesson. And notice that it goes up to 30. So if you were trying to measure inches using this side of your ruler, you would be incorrect. You have to remember that a ruler has 12 inches, and remember that we can estimate by thinking of a quarter being as wide as 1 inch. Okay, so ruler goes up to 12 inches. Okay, let's look back at our poster here. So it says, let's study a ruler. We just did, but let me restate some of those facts. It's a measuring tool. So it's used to measure objects if you want to know how long or how wide they are. It's 12 inches long. I proved that to you when I showed you this one, as well as the wood ruler. A ruler is used to measure lengths, and a ruler can also measure centimeters. So we're not going to worry too much about centimeters because that's not the focus of our lesson. Our lesson is learning to use the ruler to measure inches and estimating. So back to the term estimating. I said that you estimate when you kind of take a well thought guess about how long or how wide something is. And if I know that an inch is about a quarter wide, then I can use this as a point of reference for when I estimate. So now that we've talked about this, let's practice measuring some things. Okay, so I'm going to flip this chart over. And if I look over here, it says, let's practice measurement. And the first item I see is crayon box. And here I would write my estimate, and here I would actually measure. Now, estimate, that means to guess. Okay, guess how long or how wide. I have the crayon box here. And I'm going to first look at it and guess, how wide is it? How many quarters wide do you think can get across that? I'm going to go ahead and say 3. So I'm going to write 3. And remember, it's just an estimate. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. Where it does matter if you're right or wrong is when you actually measure it. So I'm going to measure it. I'm going to use my ruler, and it's easier to do it from the bottom. I'm going to line it up with the 0, and I'm going to see where it ends, the Crayola box ends, and it ends very close to the 3. So I was pretty close. Yes, it's not exactly 3, but it's very close to 3. So I'm going to say that this crayon box is 3 inches wide. Now, the next object that I'm going to measure is a marker. And once again, I have the marker here taped to the whiteboard. And before I actually measure it, I'm going to estimate. So, well, I know how big a quarter is. I'm going to say 6. Okay, I'm going to estimate 6 because I think maybe it's about 6 quarters long. Okay. And now I'm actually going to measure it. And I line it up, the edge where the 0 is to the edge of the object. And how long is it, boys and girls? It is 5 inches long. Okay, so my estimate was 1 inch off, but it's okay. We're just estimating. We're just guessing based on what we know about inches. And once again, I told you an inch is about a size of a quarter, so it's okay if it's wrong. Okay, this is the one that really counts because this is the one where you actually used your measuring tool. So here I have a shoe, and I just outlined the shoe just for the sake of making the lesson easier. I'm going to measure it, and I'm going to measure it from the bottom to the top. So, oops, I forgot. I got to estimate before I actually measure the shoe. So, that's a pretty big shoe. Maybe it's 12 inches long. Okay, maybe it's as long as this ruler. Okay, so I'm going to estimate that it's 12 inches long. So I line up the 0 with the bottom of the shoe, the edge of the shoe. And look where it is. It is on the 11-inch mark. So the shoe is 11 inches long. Okay, once again, my estimate and the actual measurement is a little off, but it is okay. Now, I have the notebook there, and even though it says I'm going to measure it from top to bottom, I have a feeling it's going to be really close to what the shoe is just based on looking at it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and measure it in this direction, how wide it is. Okay, so once again, I have to estimate my estimate for the width of the folder is 8 inches. So maybe it's 8 inches long. And remember, that's just my guess, so if it's not correct, it's okay. So now I line it up, the 0 with the edge of the folder, and it's a little bit past 9, but if I think, is that closer to the 9 or the 10? It's actually closer to the 9. So we're going to go ahead and say it is about 9 inches wide. Okay, about 9 inches wide. So we were correct with our first estimate, the crayon box, but as you could see, the rest of the objects that we measured, we were a little off, but it's okay. It's okay because an estimate isn't always going to be exact. It's just something that a well-thought guess, and I kept keeping this, oops, sorry about that, this quarter in mind because I had already talked about the quarter being about as wide as 1 inch. So every time I was estimating, I was thinking, how many quarters wide does this look? Okay, so this is the one that counts. Being able to know how to measure. Being able to remember and understand that whatever it is that you're measuring, you always start where the 0 is. Now, like I said, this one here, let's look at this again. This wooden ruler does not have a 0. So you would start right at the edge. You would start right at the edge of the ruler. This one, you wouldn't start quite at the edge. You would start at the 0. Okay? So it's a little different, but I'll be honest with you. Most rulers are like this wooden one. You don't see the 0. You just have to know that the 0 is where the ruler begins, right at the edge. This one, I think they did it this way for the sake of children understanding that there are 12 inches on a ruler. Okay, so that is pretty much what today's lesson is going to be for you, because now it's your turn to show me what you know about measurement. So you are going to open your book to page 646. Okay, up at the top, it always has important information. It says 1 inch is about the length of one color tile. You can use what you know about inches to estimate the length of an object. Then use an inch ruler to measure the length. So I didn't talk about color tiles because chances are you might have a quarter at home that you could refer back to, but you might not have a color tile. So I thought talking about it, relating the inch to a quarter would be better for you. Okay, so here at the bottom, page 646, 647, and 648 is where you get to show me what you know about measurement. You will do just exactly what I did on this chart. You're going to estimate the length of an object, and then you're going to actually measure. Now, one thing I have to say, you might see some objects there that you do not have at home. For example, they want you to measure how many inches long your desk is. You might not have a desk, so you can skip those, but I want you to do the ones that you do have. Okay, if you don't have a paintbrush, maybe you could do a pen. So instead of having a paintbrush here, you could write the word pen and then measure it. Do your best to get this done. Do as much as you can. And the whole purpose of this lesson is for you to practice measuring. So you don't just have to measure the objects there, but use your ruler and practice measuring other things. There's so many things at home that you can measure, and that will help you get practiced with the ruler. So once again, page 646, 647, and 648. And before I wrap this up, I do want to go back and look at our objective really quickly. So remember our objective, boys and girls, it says students will estimate and then use an inch ruler to measure objects. We did that together. We talked about estimating. We talked about the ruler. We talked about inches on the ruler. And now it's your turn to take your ruler and practice measuring. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and I can't wait to see you soon. Bye, boys and girls.